Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I think we'll get started then. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session with regards to the screening process for the Air Cadet League. Tonight, Nancy and I will be presenting the reasons why we do a screen program, and also bring up the website in order for you to understand where it is that you can find the information to pull up the documents that are required for you to pass on to the new members that are joining your society, and also to find forms for renewals that have been in the organization for a while and their screening is about to expire. We will go through what it is we want to present to you, and then we'll take your questions at the end of our presentation. And if there's anything, I guess if you can hit your hand signal on the screen, or most of you are just showing your initials, so I can't really see whether or not you have a question along the way. So if you can, keep your mics muted, and if the question you feel is important that it needs to be asked at the time that we're doing this presentation, then by all put a hand up and I'll do my best to answer that for you. Okay. So what I want to start with tonight is just the reasoning behind why we do the screening process. And I'll just read something from our screening handbook in the overview, and it's a good explanation as to why we do the screening process. So to fulfill its responsibilities to the cadets, D&D is required to conform to rulings by the Supreme Court of Canada that define the level of care required by any organization in protecting youth under its direction. This level of care has been defined as that which would be exercised by a prudent parent in protecting their child. As a full active partner in this aspect of the Air program, it is also reasonable that the Air Cadet League shall also ensure that the screening and registration protocols meet the standard expressed by the in addition to that,
Gail, hang on one second.
there was
You
a
kind of
little
cut out.
bit of information that I pulled up from. Oh, okay.
Right, you cut out. It was the
Did I
last
miss all
sentence.
of what
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of echo here.
I'm not sure if Gail is frozen. Oh, there she is. Are you with us, Gail?
Okay.
She's freezing and everything else, and the
Yeah, I'm here.
audio is not very good.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to turn my video off and just Okay, are you able to hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll just read the last sentence then that I missed that maybe got dropped. So as a full active partner in this aspect of the Air Cadet program, it's also reasonable that the Air Cadet League shall also ensure that the screening and registration protocols meet the same standard expressed by the Supreme Court of Canada. And in addition to that little excerpt from the handbook, there was another one that I picked up when reviewing the material. It says all organizations that provide programs to vulnerable people, whether run by staff or volunteers, have a responsibility to appropriately screen their volunteers. The Air Cadet League has adopted the policy that all paid staff and volunteers shall be screened and registered. This applies at the local, provincial, and national levels. The Air Cadet League policy is published in the Policy and Procedures Manual. That gives you the background as to why we do the screening process, and it's to protect our children and also to protect the volunteers. Because it is also a requirement by the Societies Act, which everyone is associated with. Okay, so Nancy, if you want to bring up the website, we can just quickly go through how it is that they can access the information on the website. So Nancy's going to share her screen.
Is that sharing now, Gail?
I don't see it yet.
Okay, hang on. I gotta go to the Chrome tab. There we go. Okay.
All right, there we have the front page to the Air Cadet League provincial website. So on the dark blue tab, you see a number of points there. The last one on the right-hand side being SSC Resources. So if you click on that SSC Resources and then go down to the screening and registration for volunteers, and you can click on that one, and then it'll come up with notation there to view forms. And then it also has more information about the screening process. So in addition to that section, there's also, if you click onto the SSC forms, Nancy has to change screens in order to, as it drops it if you try to bring up too many screens off of one page. Okay, so under the SSC forms, one of the first forms in the list is the screening checklist. So this is something that you'd want to make available when you're taking in an application, or someone that's interested in belonging to your organization, into the society. So you want to sit down with them and start the process of giving them the documents that are required for them to fill out, and to explain the program to them so they understand what it is that they're getting into, and the reasoning behind asking for an EPIC and references and that sort of thing. So you want to keep track of what you've gone through with your applicant. So if you have this checklist available, then you can just tick it off, and once you receive documents back from them, then you can keep track of what you have and what needs to be filled out still. And then when it comes time to sending the documents into the BCPC office, then you can rest assured that you have all the necessary documents filled out. I don't think I need to go through each one of those separately, but
Did you want to discuss about the outlining the steps, and then I can move to that one?
okay. I do have a couple of notes that I made, Nancy, for applicant minimum requirements. It's not necessarily on one of the forms that you had there on the website. But if you wanted to bring up the list of documents that are under the forms, I can point out which ones that they'll need to. Yeah, that's the one. So if I just want to go down this list and point out to you which documents that you will require to hand out to a new applicant. So the BCF 300, which is the BC Screening Volunteer Status Form, and that's just explaining to them what organization they're joining, and that they're willing to become a member of that particular society, and that they understand that they'll be required to get a criminal record check done. So that's the first document. Next one is the BCF 301. That's the screening checklist that we were just reviewing. That will help you keep on track as to which documents you've given out and are waiting to come back. The BCF 302, which is the application form. So this gives them 2 pages of directions and shows them how they would go about making the application for their criminal record check under the Sterling back check process. So all the steps involved in doing that is on one of those sheets of instruction. And then there's 2 pages of information that they need to fill out as part of their application. So that form there is an important one, of course. BCF 303, which is the applicant interview form. And this gives you a series of questions that you need to sit down with the applicant and ask them these questions, and then just fill out the form. And then the BCF 304, which is the reference check form. So they're asked to provide 4 references, but you only are required to contact 2. We asked for 4 so that if the person doing the interviewing or the reference checks has trouble getting hold of the first or second reference, then they can move on to the 3rd or 4th. But they do only require to complete 2 reference checks. Okay, and then we can skip down to the very bottom, and that's the BCF 312. And that's the membership application to join the society. And this one's also required once they've completed their screening process, they've got their criminal record check, and then they need to apply to join the society. And then that particular form you will bring up at your next directors meeting, and then you vote. You'll have the information that you need, and you make a motion to accept, whether you're going to accept or deny the membership application of this particular person. And the screening coordinator will have the recommendation on whether to move forward or not with that application. Okay, so in this list, there's also some other forms which you won't necessarily need along the way, because when the volunteer reaches their 5th year, their renewal form is then required. So that's only after they've completed the 5 years, and they have to go through the screening process 2nd time and fill out the renewal form. Okay, and then the BSS request form is one probably that we will be removing from the list, because as a volunteer organization, we're not able to ask for a VSS check to be done. That was put in there previously because the military side requires that VSS when you're working directly with cadets. So, for instance, if you were asked to do some supervision or working as the canteen lady, or I think it's when you're driving cadets and that sort of thing, when you're in direct contact, contact with cadets themselves. So, but as a league person, you cannot be responsible for the actual supervision. You have to have a military, like a COATS officer, CIC officer, or a paid CI. in your presence as well. You cannot be the sole supervisor of cadets. You have to have one of those military personnel with you. So that's where that VSS came into fruition. But now that D&D has changed the MOU, and they will be doing the screening for any of the personnel that are working directly with cadets. So they must go through the process on the military side. For instance, if they are the canteen person, or if they're doing volunteering at the weekend exercises and that sort of thing. Okay, and then the volunteer transfer form is when someone wants to change from one squadron to another. So that's not a form that's used very often, but it's there for that purpose. And then if you lose your screening card, you can apply to get a new card. And then the other two are handbooks. So it's recommended that the coordinator for the squadron doing the screening and registration download this handbook. And it also gives much more detail and information. So even if you wanted to go in and have a look through that handbook, then you'll better understand the whole process. So, but it's something that the screening coordinator for your SSC will want to have on hand, because it gives you a lot more information than I'm able to cover here tonight. Okay. All right, I guess we can move on.
Did we want to go over the handbook at all, Gail, or are we just going to?
Well, I think you had it. You had it on your screen there, right? And we can. Bring it up on the screen, and not sure how much I can.
Well, basically, it's more just for information for everybody who's listening this evening.
Yep.
You're basically looking at page 7 and onwards for all the things to do with everything that Gail has just walked you through. And some of these things are really quite interesting in the sense that they can help you with regards to, especially when you're doing the interview, and they're giving you some guidelines about what you can and cannot say during the interview to make sure that you're being, non-biased in any way. So these are just like general practices. And just so everybody understands, this is an Air Cadet League book. This is not a provincial book. So this is coming straight out of the Air Cadet League of Canada. So this is for across the entire country. And so the SSRC book is the one that's for the squadron sponsoring committees, and the PS one is for the provincial coordinator. So it is important to kind of make sure that your screening personnel understands what their job is.
Just to give you a quick overview then we'll take questions if anyone has any questions. So the applicant minimum requirements is to complete a screening and registration form, and then to complete a criminal record check, now known as an enhanced police information check. That's the EPIC, which you can apply online to Sterling Back Check. It will cost $26, but it's valid for 5 years, and you're also able to transfer that EPIC or that check. It belongs to you, and you can share it with other organizations. So that is something else that might be of benefit to you if you're volunteering with another organization. You can also use it for those purposes. Provide the names of 4 references. And again, only 2 interviews are required, but we ask for extra names if it's hard to get a hold of the first 2 that you that you list. You have to make yourself available for a personal interview, which the screening coordinator will do with you along with a second person. Provide a current JPEG photo of basically just from the neck up. Yeah, just so a headshot. And then a renewal form, which is only if your membership is about to expire, then you have to go through the process, or just the EPIC or criminal record check by police department every 5 years. And then there's a renewal form to complete. Okay. So I think most people have heard that the military side has changed their process somewhat, in that anyone volunteering on the military side, like I mentioned before, anybody that's doing, for instance, canteen, you're in direct contact with cadets at the canteen. If you're going to a weekend exercise, you're in the presence of cadets. And also other, if you're doing tag days, now they've got restrictions on tag days, but you're doing driving, you have cadets in your vehicle, all those type of incidences now, you need to be screened on the military side because you are more in more direct contact with cadets. And like I mentioned before, Air Cadet League personnel, civilian personnel, cannot be left as the sole supervisor of a cadet. You must have a military person, whether it be a paid CI or an officer, in the direct vicinity. So in the building, if you're doing a class or something, making a presentation, or again, if you're on a weekend exercise, obviously there's going to be officers and that around. So just read one excerpt that I took from, because the military has a separate screening document. It's called the 5010-0 adult screening, and they've got their requirements listed in that document. And just an excerpt that I took from that particular document. Vulnerable Sector Search, or the VSS. All activities involving cadets are conducted under the authority of the Canadian Armed Forces. There can be no activities carried out solely under the authority of the League that involves cadets. Note that this includes fundraising activities. League members supporting activities involving cadets must comply with the Group Order 5010-0 adult screening, which sets a screening policy that includes, as required, the requirement for a VSS. So that's the military side wanting to have that one document that I pointed out on that list of documents is the VSS, and they require that document. One note to note is the SSCs are not required to pay for the criminal record checks for the D&D side. D&D covers the cost for the criminal record check, their personnel, and the bill should be submitted to the CO for submission to RCSU for reimbursement. So if the CO comes to the sponsoring committee and says, I want these 3 parent volunteers to be screened for the purposes of assisting on the military side, you should be referring them back to submitting that bill to RCSU for reimbursement. Sponsoring committee is not responsible to pay for that cost for the military side. They have contingency to cover those costs, and they have informed us that that's what they will do. They will pay for those people that are volunteering on their side. They will pay for their criminal record checks. Because as far as I know, there could be a cost for asking for the VSS to be done through the police department. Okay, I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to point out. And like I mentioned before, if you go to the website and specifically have a look at that SSC handbook for the screening process, that will answer a lot of questions that you might have regarding the process. And then the forms can be, and actually the forms can be filled out online. And that's the way that Vicki wants the forms to be submitted to the BC Provincial Committee. You fill out the forms online. Everything's done online now. SSC will keep a copy of the application, and once Vicki notifies you that she has all the documentation, everything is filled out correctly, and she's received the Sterling back check, the EPIC, once she receives that, and the JPEG, then she will send you back an email saying that everything is good to go and it's passed all the screening requirements. And at that point, then you can destroy your copies, your hard copies of the application form, with the exception of the first page of the application. Recommend that you keep a copy of that because that gives you the person's name and address and just their basic information. And then that last page, the BCF 312, you should be keeping a copy of that on your records as well, because then that's your confirmation that you have presented it at a director's meeting, at an SSC meeting, and accepted them into your society. Because you must have that in your minutes document that they've been accepted into your society. Okay, I think we can open it up. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Or
Got a
if there's
question.
anything else. Sure. Ed?
Hello. I just filled out this form, the CJCR 5010-0. It's fairly
Okay.
straightforward. They give you a bunch of application types. And as an SSC member, we just tick off as a volunteer. That's all we would be doing. So I'm doing the, amongst other things, we're doing the canteen, etc. And
Right.
None of us had been doing this before. Didn't
Right.
realize we had to have it done. The form they give the parents for their clearance, for their volunteer, for their side, is fairly straightforward as well. It's 2-page, I think, similar
Right.
to this one, and it's quick. But why do we still have to have ours if they've already got theirs? Like the D&D side, like I'm going to have lots of people who'll be asking, because I know we have at least 9 people when we got their introduction package filled out those forms. So when we come up with our AGM, they're going to be asking, well, why should we have to go through the SSC and get screened on their side? It's a double screening. Why? It should be all, to me, it should be all the same.
Well,
One cover all.
the problem being,
Because if you're a late into, like myself, my renewal is up next year. So when I get this D&D side done, that's going to be new. So how does that renewal going to work?
they're two totally separate screening processes. So you must complete the screening process for the Air Cadet League like we've done all along.
Yeah.
And the fact that the D&D is asking for screening to be done on their side now, that is something new just in the last year, I
Yeah.
think it is. And that's totally up, that's their decision. And
I was
it's
told,
not connected to ours. So,
well, yeah, because they don't recognize CPIC. But
yeah,
I was also
see,
told
that's,
too, like the administration officer and the training officer both assumed that they were doing the whole thing and we didn't have to do anything. So I
no,
got
that's
that, I
not
got that
correct.
straightened out. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So I got that straightened out.
I
Thank
think
you.
there
I have
was
Military-
another
something along the
question.
way.
Yeah,
Sorry.
pardon?
The military side is insisting on having the VSS, and as a volunteer organization on the Air Cadet League side, we are not able to ask our volunteers to get the vulnerable sector screening done at the police department. So we have not asked our volunteers to do that step, but the military side requires that for their process because that's the only thing that they'll recognize. And for our insurance purposes, you must go through the screening process on the league side.
I have another quick question, then I'll be quiet.
Okay.
You said fill forms online. I sort of missed what you meant by that.
There are fillable forms on the website. So from what I understand, these forms you can fill out from that list.
You don't have to print them and then fill them out and then scan them back in. You can actually just save them
Oh, okay.
and then do it that way. Yeah.
Same what we do anyways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Barb, you had a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've never had to do the screening before, but we've lost all our volunteers, so it's now down to me. I've never, when I was screened 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't do this BCF 312. Is this a new form, or did we just not do it properly out of the gate?
It could have
Or
been
the
that it was
300
missed.
for that matter.
Yeah, it could be that it was just missed before, but that is your official application to join the society. So it is a requirement. So it should have been filled
Okay.
out previously. So I guess maybe it was just missed.
Yeah, so none of our volunteers that we do have that form.
Okay.
So do I have to reach out to people and get that completed,
Yes,
or?
you should have it completed. Again, that's sort of one of the steps for you to keep it in the minutes of your of the SSC meetings. So you have to accept them into your society in order for them to be able to vote at your AGM. They have to be members of your society in order to get that vote. So you have to have a record of who's on your screen members list.
Well, we get the list from you guys prior to our AGM that tells us who our screen members are. Like that's how we've relied. I'm from 513. I don't know if you know that. So we just get the list from you guys. Then we know, okay, these are our screen members. Because if we were supposed to have this done, then we actually have no members that are valid for our AGM. We have no directors. We have no members.
Do you know whether or not they went, whether at the meetings you went through a process of the screening coordinator indicating that these particular people have applied to join our society? We're recommending that they be accepted, and then they're accepted into the minutes because that is the proper procedure to go through.
Yeah, that hasn't been done since I joined 4 years ago.
Okay, well,
I'd
recommend that you include that in the steps moving forward. And if you say
we haven't had a dedicated screening. We haven't had a dedicated screening coordinator for the last 4 years.
Okay.
We only have 3 directors right now. And I can tell you, because I'm one of them, that two of us have we've never been screened in. I don't know if the chair was, because she came on before I joined the board. So I don't know about her. But yeah, I mean, I can do it going forward, but this is news to me. As I said, I just came on as the secretary, and now I'm doing everything. So
you can accept everybody that's a member now that you haven't accepted yet. Even if they were screened 4 years ago, you can accept them at your next meeting.
Just make a note of it, and they've got a screen. They've got
just
a
directors
member card. Yeah.
Just at the directors meeting. It doesn't have to be the AGM.
No, not the AGM. It doesn't have to be the AGM, but in order for them to be able to vote, they have to be a member of your society. So.
Foolish question for Barb. Have they all got screening cards now?
We have, well, as far as I know, the three directors do. Yes, we have our cards, and we've had one member screened in the past year, and I don't know if he has his card yet. I can ask him.
Okay, so you're okay that way then.
The chair had handled his screening, so I don't know. I think I do recall hearing that his card had come through.
Okay.
For the old prior members, yeah, I don't know anything about any of them. But I don't think we have that many right now. So
well,
I think
the
most of
reason
these
I'm
people
asking
are.
is if you've already got your card, that means the BCBC office has had all the required documentation at the time that you got the cards. So it'd just be a matter of just renewing for those that have to be renewed.
Yeah.
Is there a particular order for all these forms to be filled out?
Well, those ones that I highlighted, the 300 to 304, they all need to be filled out together, like sent in as part of the package, along with the 312.
Okay, so it can be mixed up. There's no particular order you want it sent out.
How do you mean that? Just like if
page
it's part
1,
of the
2, 3,
package?
4, 5, like continuous. That's my big contention. Is these pages are not numbered, so.
Oh, okay.
You send them all
if
out.
they were numbered, it would be easy, because one of the questions you have to ask in screening is one of them that says on page 2. Where's page 2? It's not numbered.
Okay.
Okay, valid.
I think there's only 2 pages to the actual application, so
Yeah.
that's probably what's being referred to. But I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at the whole package, that's your.
Yep.
Even though you've got the 2 pages, the rest of the form is part of that package. So.
Right.
Well, I would take it as that's the whole thing, every page, not just the first 2.
Right.
Because of the background checks and references, etc., and interviews.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Gail. Question.
Is that Wilma?
Yes. Hi.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi.
And Jeff, I noticed your hand was up, so I'll get to you next, Jeff. Go ahead, Wilma.
Thank you. So right now we have several ongoing screenings. Can I proceed because they've already submitted their application to us in order to catch up for our AGM on November 22nd? Or should I put them in packaging and then submit it to you guys first, then wait for your approval before calling the references?
So the people have already filled out applications to join your society?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
I've really tried to push it. So now we're looking for at least maybe 20 new screen membership or more.
Okay, they need to fill out the screening application form because they have to be screened or you can accept them into your society.
So you have to finish everything, Wilma. You have to do the interviews and the reference checks before it all goes to Vicky. Vicky can.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Also, it's the same routine. I thought it would be different. Okay, so it's the same routine as before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Vicky.
Jeff, you had a question?
Yeah, about screening non-member volunteers. We've got a couple this year. Just do thing. There's quite a gap in the cadets. So a couple of the cadets that have aged out have come back as non-member volunteers to kind of help out. With screening them, do we still have to do references and interview and everything as well, or how does that work?
They're volunteering on the military side
I guess.
as instructors or helping out with the cadets, correct?
They're helping out with the cadets, correct?
Yeah. Then they are the responsibility of the commanding officer, and you don't screen them at all. It's up to the commanding officer to do the screening for those particular people that are volunteering on his side of the table.
Only if they want to become members of your society do you screen them.
Yeah.
So,
So if they wanted to join your committee on the sponsoring committee side, then you would screen them. But because they're coming back to volunteer and help out with cadets, they're actually working with the cadets. They're on the commanding officer's responsibility.
And just one clarification about the canteen, because we've been running it this year with the SSC members, but we just have our regular SSC screening.
That again is something that's new this year, because they're in direct contact with cadets. It's the D&D is requiring them to be screened on the military side, so they're having to do a dual screening process.
Okay, so any of our SSC members,
they're belonging to your society. Yeah, they belong to your society, and they're assisting with the sponsoring committee side of the table. However, they're in direct contact with cadets, so the military side requires them to be screened and have a VSS done.
Okay, so, that's good to know.
But that comes under the responsibility again of the commanding officer, and it's up to the D&D side to pay for that second screening package.
Okay, thank you.
Additional question.
Go ahead, Wilma.
Thank you. So I heard about the transfer form. Now, what I've gathered was that they have to go from the first step to become a screen member if they are coming from a different province. Is that correct?
They're coming. Are they coming from an Air Cadet squadron?
Yes, ma'am.
If they're transferring from an Air Cadet squadron to an Air Cadet squadron, then the screening has already been done, and I believe it's transferable to. There's a transfer form that they just need to fill out, and you can contact the last squadron that they were with, and have the information. Once they've filled out that form, you can have it transferred to your SSC. However, if they're coming from a Navy League or an Army League, they're coming over to the Air Cadet League, then they have to do the whole screening package right from the beginning, because their screening process is quite different from the Air Cadet League's screening process. But as long as they're coming from an Air Cadet to an Air Cadet, because our program is nationwide, same all across Canada, whereas the Army and the Navy is different. They're not as not the same type of process. Okay.
Perfect. Yes, that gave a much better information. Thank you.
Okay.
I will update the parents, because I just sent out all the links last night and prior to that, like last month as well. So we've got like ongoing processing right now. So,
good.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Any other questions? Everyone's comfortable with going to the website and having a look, and if you do that and you find you have questions that you need answered, you can call us at the office or fire me an email and I can get you the answer to it.
Sorry, I did have one more question.
Sure, go ahead, Barb.
Is it, what's the email we send it to? Is it screening@BCPC, or is it to Vicky, or
It's
send
the
this
screen. This is the one with the screening. If you have, yeah, the package just goes to the screening. Yeah, email address.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Carol.
Thanks. Regarding needing to be screened when you have direct contact with air cadets. So in the past, if there was a officer supervising,
yes,
you're there and you're in the same room and they're supervising, it was okay. So that we didn't have to get the VSS screening. So now
that's correct.
So now, whether they're in the room or not, we still have to get the VSS screening if we're helping, for example, with canteen. Is that correct?
That's why we asked D&D to be on, because their interpretation is a little gray. And when I say the canteen person is in direct contact with cadets, yes, there's officers there, but it's my understanding that the military side still wants the canteen person to be screened on their side of the organization as well, because they are in direct contact with cadets. Same with people that are going out to cook and whatnot at weekend exercises. Again, there are military personnel on site. However, from my understanding is, because again, they're in direct contact with cadets, they want those volunteers screened on their side as well as on the Air Cadet League side.
Okay, so they've.
Now, I was hoping that somebody from the military side would come on this meeting tonight to sort of clarify, because I've also heard that League people would not necessarily need to have the secondary screening done on the military side. So here we get into the gray area, which is what happened years ago, and the reason why we came down with no more occasional drivers, because years ago it used to be that if someone drove occasionally for tag day, they weren't required to have screening done. However, we did away with that because there was too much of risk management happening there. You've got cadets going with a stranger being driven to a tag day location, and so you wanted everybody covered. And so that's why we said zero tolerance policy. Drivers that were taking cadets to screening locations have to be screened. So there was no more occasional drivers were exempt from doing the screening process. If you're volunteering with the Air Cadet League organization, you must be screened for the protection of those kids and for your own protection as well.
Okay, so it's
okay.
Okay, so
it's something that the military side has brought in under their new MOU, and conforming to their requirements. They're the ones that are saying that those type of incidences where they're volunteering directly with cadets, that they now have to be screened on the military side as well.
Okay, so the CO or an officer should initiate this approach.
That's right. The CO should be taking care of having those volunteers screened.
Okay.
On their side.
Can I just maybe make one comment too?
Yeah, and then I'll get to Ted.
Yeah, we have CCC meetings starting up very soon across the province. So bring these questions up at your CCC meetings to get some more clarification if you need to. That's all I can suggest at this time, just to get clarification from maybe officers and maybe put it on their radar that, you know, we want to know on our part if we need to be screened as somebody who's going to come in and start pinning medals on kids as a league rep or as an SSC chair, making announcements at the end of the parade night or helping out with effective speaking or whatever. So maybe bring this information up at your CCC meetings as well.
Because the reason I say that it's a little bit of a gray area is they brought up the example of bringing in a volunteer presenter to the cadets, so a guest speaker. They don't require that guest speaker to go through their excuse me, through their screening process, because obviously there's going to be an officer in the room with this guest speaker doing their presentation. So in those type of instances, they don't require a civilian person to be undergoing their screening process when they're just coming in for a one-night presentation. I'll
Yeah.
get to you in a minute, Thomas. Ted
That's
had his
okay.
hand up.
I know. I'm just getting in line.
Okay.
Okay.
Ted, you had a question? Yeah.
Yeah, at the AGM, we sat with the lieutenant commander and the chief, and
Right.
I asked some screening questions, and that was part of it. Was even though we aren't screened on their side, can we stay with an officer in that room? Hard no. You have to be screened. Period. Doesn't matter what you do, you have to be done on their side. That's directly from the lieutenant commander. And the training officer was up last week, and she reiterated that as well. So definitely have to do both screening. So it's my idea is when we get our AGM and we get our committee in, especially the maintenance guy, your first vice or whatever, get them all double screened, so that if they have to do stuff, whatever, especially if you're supposed to do it and somebody else has to step in, you're up the hoop because they're not double screened. Like, get your extra staff, committee members screened, and that would help, including your parent support group.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ted.
Because I would say a lot of them would need it as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Thomas. Thank you, Ted.
Well, I think I just got the answer, so no problem.
Okay.
Ping, I think.
All right, Ping, you have a question?
Unmute yourself first. Unmute. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. It's very informative for me. It's because I'm trying to do screening. Just wondering, when I do the interview with the parents,
Yes.
we need two people, right? The second person, can it be from the DND side, from the office? No, it has to be.
Why would you want to use an officer?
Because if I can't find another parents volunteer to join me on because from my understanding, we need them to screen and approve before they can join us in the committee. Is that correct?
Yes. Before they become a member of your society, they must be screened. So yes, you will have to go through the interview process with that person. So you yourself and one other person. So if you have no one else to sit in on that interview with you, then yes, you could use an officer. But I just wanted to make sure that you weren't interviewing them for the officer side of the organization, because that's up to them to do their screening. But if you're asking them a favor to sit on in the interview with you just because you don't have anyone else available, then yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
You
Okay,
could also
thank you.
reach out to your league rep, possibly too.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
That could also help.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
What happens when you do the interview by yourself and there's nobody else there? You just go ahead and do it?
Well, not recommended, because
I've
you
had to do
really
that
need.
the last couple of times.
Well,
Yeah, you really should have a second person there. Just then you have two people who can actually hear what's been said, so you can't come back there and.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
I
the
know.
last time I did it with another person, we just took every other question and did it that way, and it was really quick.
It's
Yeah.
basically protection for the interviewer.
yeah.
You know, if you happen to know the person quite well that you're talking to, probably might not be a problem, but there's probably been issues later somewhere down. There's a reason why they want the second person. Obviously, they've had problems with with he said, she said routine afterwards. So if you have
Yeah.
3 people in there, you're pretty well going to get the straight goods every time. What's been said and what the answers were. So the second person doesn't have to ask the question. They're just sitting there watching, and they could be the one taking the notes, you know?
Yeah.
And you have a spot on the interview form. There's a spot for 2 people. You need 2 signatures there.
Yes.
To
Yeah,
submit.
so that
Yeah.
basically verifies what the interview was done and what the questions were and the answers were, and that's it. That's all. Just might say it's a checklist for the checklist for the checker.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then I believe we can.
Oh, Vicky,
Yeah.
one more. Sorry, when you were talking about the 2 signatures, just for clarification, because at the bottom of the form, it's asking there for the SLC chairperson. But I know
Right.
that right now, because it's been really such a lot of load for a chairperson, especially if we don't have enough executive boards. So to be a screening member as well, I mean, it can be delegated to anyone. So now if we have delegated that responsibility to somebody who's not a chairperson, does the chairperson still have to sign that?
Are you talking strictly
You
about
can-
the interview form?
Yeah, at the bottom of that one form, I forgot which form is that, but there is, I think, one
On the actual application, on the one
Yes.
where it's saying to recommend whether the chair
Yes,
is
what is
recommending.
Yes.
Yeah. What you can do is, as the screening coordinator, you can fill it in
Mhm.
and put as per chair, but you're putting in yourself as the screening coordinator. But you
Okay.
really should have a conversation with the chairperson.
I
to
am the
say that
chairperson.
You are the chairperson. Okay.
Yes, but we gave
If you're
the
getting
screening the
okay, if you're getting someone else as stepping in as the screening coordinator,
Yes.
they can fill out the documents, they can take over the responsibility of screening that person, but they should be coming back to you and having a conversation with you saying the interview went well, you know, there's no concerns, this sort of thing, so that they are informed as to what's going on and that you have given, in your opinion, they are suitable to join the organization. So the chair needs to be aware of how that interview went. So in other words, after you've notified them and spoken to them, then they would have the ability to back up your recommendation. Okay?
Yes.
So, but if the chairperson is not available when you conduct that interview, then you can sign on behalf of the chairperson, as long as you're notifying the chair as to how the interview went.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
One last maybe piece of information for all of you who are screening coordinators and are helping out with this process. When it comes to making your 2 phone calls, always make sure that you discuss with the person who's supplying these contacts, that these contacts are contacted by that person to say, hey, it's okay for you to answer a few questions. You're going to get a phone call from somebody at the squadron where my son or daughter is, and they're going to just ask you a few questions about me. Please go ahead and make sure you answer to the best of your ability, right? And I mean, if they even want to, they can share the questions with that person that they're putting on as their reference. I have done enough over the years where I make a phone call and somebody goes, I'm not giving you personal information about so-and-so. They're my best friends or whatever. Sorry, goodbye, click. Because they weren't notified by the person who was
To be expecting the phone call. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick, you have a question?
Yes, I have one. How many of our league reps and league personnel are dual screened?
Probably none.
If you were asked to do a presentation of a long service medal, you are in direct contact with a cadet. The way how I hear these officers talking is we must all be screened in order to have that direct contact to be able to give them that medal. Even though there was officers in the room, they're saying that's not adequate. Can that be checked out and cleared up, please? Because I think that we're going to have occasions where certain officers are going to exert their authority and say, no, you're not screened, therefore you can't give that medal.
The other question becomes up along the same lines, Rick. Legion
What's
medals.
that?
Legion medals. When Legion comes out and presents at the ACM, at their ACRs, the Legion Medal of Merit at the ACR.
But that's a special
Yeah,
presentation. I think that's,
So these medals it's the same situation. You've got a Legion pinning a medal on
Yeah.
a cadet. They're not
yeah,
screened.
these are going to fall under those guest speaker type of situations, I'm
I think
sure.
that's
However, I'll bring up your question, Rick, to
I
the
just
military
presented a bunch of
side
long
and
service
say that
medals
it
2
came
weeks
up.
ago. No problem. Nobody
Yep.
asked me.
I'll bring that up, Rick. Okay, Ted.
Vicky, sorry, another question. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I'll get Ted first. Okay, Wilma, just a minute. Go ahead, Ted.
Okay, last year I screened a person, but he ended up being going on the CI side. He decided after, so we changed his application before we sent it in. So should I have gone through with that anyways, or
Yeah, that was before
it's
this.
just a waste of my time, sort of paperwork kind of thing?
Yeah, if
Because
he
we
is,
didn't have these 5010-0s at that time.
no, it would have been the responsibility of the commanding officer to fill in the missing documents. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Because on the old
that
form,
was
you used to have a choice, either
Yep.
you're a volunteer or you wanted to go as an
non-member. Yeah, yeah,
non-member. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yep. No,
And-
that would have been the CO's responsibility to make sure all of his paperwork was included in the application.
Thank you.
Okay, Wilma, go ahead.
This just happened last year, so I'm just curious whether it does make sense. If for some reason we found or use a coach for effective speaking, like example, like Toastmasters, so they need to be screened or double screened?
Again, that will fall under the guest speaker. And from my understanding from the military side, that there would be a D&D personnel on site if you've got someone from Toastmasters or another organization that's doing a presentation, and they would not be required to do a screening package. They'd be fine. They'd just be doing the presentation.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, whether it be in person or virtual.
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
virtual
Now
wouldn't matter
with
because
a
they're not around
yeah,
the cadet.
in the case of Toastmasters, it's sort of an ongoing class. So you might ask them if they would mind being screened, although from what I understand, as long as military, at least that's the way it was in the past, as long as there was military personnel on site, then they weren't required. I did have a situation where it was one of the parents of a cadet that was doing the effective speaking coordinator or teacher, and she was screened through the league side because she was a parent. So there was no problem that way. But again, there was someone from the military side. Whenever she was holding her classes, they were there. So, okay. Ted?
Thank you.
I thought D&D was doing effective speaking. They were in charge of that.
What we were led to believe
buck back
initially,
to us.
they were supposed to have a program. They were supposed to be taking, from what we heard, they were supposed to be taking over the effective speaking program. That never came to fruition. What it was that they were putting a part of the effective speaking or effective communication into their program, which was accessible for if they had an officer that was willing to go into the what do they call it, their training syllabus and look up the information and take on the task of teaching cadets during regular class time. If they had an officer that was willing to do that, they would incorporate that. However, they had so many other tasks, they never had any officers that had the time to go in and pull up the information from their training packages, teach effective communication in their curriculum. So it never came to fruition.
Well, seeing
And
the
it fell
things that you
back on
just-
the league to keep running their effective speaking program because they did it differently and quite effectively. So,
Well,
yeah,
what
it
you
never.
just said, what you just said there, sorry. I do believe one of our officers is going to be teaching effective speaking.
Well, if they want to do it, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Take it off our hands. But I understand too that Toastmasters do have their own screening.
I would imagine they would because
And
they're dealing with.
That would be a D&D question: is do they accept it? Which to me they should, so they wouldn't need to in that case.
Yeah, I think they should, because these Toastmasters come in, they're in for a finite time. They're not there all year. They may be down for, say, 4 sessions, and that's it, or whatever the course was running at. So it's not as if they're a full-time instructor with the squadrons.
Yeah, but too, don't they teach Toastmasters go to the schools too, don't they?
Oh, they probably do. I'm
In
not
some
sure.
sense. So if they go to a school, they would have to be screened as well.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people, probably some of you here are professionals that need to be screened for your work, for instance, or maybe you work at you volunteer at your children's school and you need to be screened, but that screening is not transferable over to BCP, the Air Cadet League, or D&D. So it wouldn't, I know for sure the Toastmasters screening would not be enough. You have to do a whole new screening.
My question to the D&D side is that, like, how many times would a person be volunteering before they would expect them to undergo a screening process? Like I say, the effective speaking curriculum is more than usually 4 sessions. It's 6 or 8 or whatever, how many sessions. So
yeah, so it sounds
where do they draw the line? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so it's up to the CO. You'll have to ask the CO and find out what's up as far as D&D is concerned, because I think a guest speaker is somebody that comes in once. Any more than that, like teaching first aid or effective speaking, over a couple months. That's my thinking, that's not a guest speaker. That's more of a long-term instructor, even though they may be a guest just for that year. That's more long-term. But anyways, like you said, that's up to the officer, the CO, the D&D side to decide.
Yeah.
What that
and
is.
I'll bring that question to them as well.
If you do it all virtually, this becomes a non-issue.
Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions, I think we can draw this session to a close. And again, if you have any further questions that come up at a later time, send your questions on to either the screening email or to the BCPC office, and we'll get an answer for you. Okay. All right. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody have